Now, after Russia launched that full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and that happened in February 2022, and this happened after it annexed Crimea in 2014, this entire war, Russia-Ukraine war, has been raging on for the last 3 years. Ukraine has found strong support in Europe, and indeed it did in the US as well, but only after the Biden administration. That happened to be a turnaround as far as Ukraine's support in the US is concerned. Now under Trump, the end to the war has become very unpredictable. The support seems to be much more for Russia. As part of that peace initiative, Donald Trump is saying he's going to talk to Putin, and this talk is going to happen on Tuesday. What is it about? He says it is about land, it is about power plants, and intriguingly, dividing up certain assets. Those are the words that Trump has used. So which assets is he really talking about slicing up? That last phrase could mean anything from nuclear plants to natural gas pipelines or even territorial adjustments. But given Ukraine's stance, the idea of slicing up land like a real estate deal is bound to spark alarm bells, not just in Kyiv, but also in Brussels, the de facto capital of the European Union. So from what we are hearing, Europe is not convinced that Russia really wants peace. Ukraine is, of course, still being bombarded. Russia is flexing its diplomatic and military muscles, claiming that NATO underestimated them. So are we heading for an actual breakthrough in this ceasefire deal, a peace deal that the US is pushing for, separately talking to Ukraine and also engaging Putin? Joining us are two experts who are going to help us understand the pulse of Moscow and Washington. Professor Sanjay Kumar Pandey is from JNU's Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies. And joining him is former Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Gentlemen, always a pleasure to have you on India Tonight here on ET Now. Thanks for making the time. Mr. Pandey, to you first. Now that Trump and Putin are set to have these talks on Tuesday, the phrase dividing up certain assets has come up, and that's making waves. What do you think this signals? What do the words mean? Is it about pragmatism, or is there something more worrying that you see?
In fact, it's very, very unclear as to what assets he's talking about. If it was a negotiation between US and Ukraine, one could have thought that perhaps he is talking about, Trump is talking about Ukrainian assets or Ukrainian mineral deal. But since this is a talk between Trump and Putin, one can only imagine that perhaps he's talking about land, because land is what is the sticking point. The Russians insist that the land that they have taken from Ukraine in the course of 3 years, they would like to keep. And the Ukrainians are equally insistent that their land cannot be bargained for a ceasefire. What we can think of is that perhaps for 30 days, the issues of land will be kept on the side, and they will first agree to a ceasefire, after which these nitty-gritties can be worked out. The problem is that both the sides have put certain conditionalities in order to accept the ceasefire. The Russians insist that during this period of 30 days, there should be no arms supplies from Europe or other allies of Ukraine, and the Ukrainians should not be allowed to engage in military buildup, which can help them after the expiry of 30 days.
Yes.
On the other hand, the Ukrainians would like to have certain security guarantees. So we really don't know what type of deal Trump is talking about.
Yes. Indeed. So there is so much skepticism about when he talks about this kind of division of assets. Ambassador Sajjanhar, what does it suggest to you? First, we are talking about, and there was this major flare-up in the White House about Ukraine and that it wasn't signing up what could be a peace deal, and that was Trump's problem. At this time, Trump, though of course we're not hearing from the Russian side as much about this, but about really splitting assets. Now that sounds to many analysts as really dividing the spoils. Does it to you?
Yes, thank you very much, Vikram. You're very right. I think it sounds very, very intriguing. You know, to me, it gives the idea as to when, Poland was divided, let us say in 1793, major chunk of that going to Russia, part of it going to Prussia, part of it going to Austro-Hungarian Empire. and the Poles were not asked anything about it. So here also it appears as if the fate of Ukraine and Ukrainians is being decided by Trump and Putin without, asking Ukraine anything about it. You know, when the Russia is talking about the ceasefire, it has certain conditions that, there should be a guarantee that all the 20% of the land that Russia has taken, that should be stay with Russia. Even in the area of Donetsk and Luhansk, where the Ukrainian troops are still there, they should be allowed to, they should be forced to evict and they should be forced to go away.
Yes.
Commitment that Ukraine is not going to become a member of NATO, demilitarization of Ukraine. You know, these are all aspects one had thought would be a part of the negotiations when, as and when they take place.
Yes.
And what Ukraine has said is that it should be an unconditional 30-day ceasefire. So we'll really have to wait and see as to what Mr. Trump is getting at. But, his comments coming right from the time that he had the first conversation with Mr. Putin, and also the meetings between Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov in Riyadh, and after that, the two delegations meeting in Istanbul. That doesn't, give rise to great optimism that it is going to be a fair deal, a just deal, a durable deal,
Right.
that will keep Russia away,
Right.
and not make it to attack, once again.
But Professor, just taking away from what the ambassador is saying over here, in terms of conditionalities that you yourself alluded to, now there is this demand, as far as Ukraine is concerned, to regain control of their biggest nuclear power plant. And that's on the table right now. And Trump has mentioned about these plants, these power plants as well, though he hasn't specifically talked about one. Do you think Russia would ever agree? Or is this going to become a permanent sticking point where they give back control of the nuclear power plant to Ukraine?
That's true. In fact, Ukraine's energy infrastructure has been one of the targets of Russian attack. Russians have been trying to pulverize Ukrainian electricity and energy supplies to force Ukrainians to come to a peace deal on Russia's conditions. So that is perhaps one point that one concession perhaps that Trump would like to get from Russia, so that he has something to show to the Ukrainians that, look, we have at least got this for you. But whether that alone will suffice, I don't think.
Right.
I think both Russia and Ukraine have very substantive issues,
Yes.
on which they would like concessions from the other side. Whether Trump will be able to get those concessions is the moot point.
Yes.
But of course, neither of the sides would like to antagonize Trump too much.
Right. But does
Zelensky
that even
has
mean,
in the
Professor, does that
Yes.
even mean that because there has been so much talk about the US tilting in favor of Putin, I'm just wondering what you think is in this kind of ceasefire deal that America is angling for Putin himself? Ukraine is still under attack from Russia. There are reports of continued Russian advances in several parts of Ukraine on the eastern front, in Sumy, in Kursk. So is there any real incentive for Putin to negotiate a ceasefire right now? Or is he just kind of waiting on the sidelines and making noises where they don't amount to much?
That's very correct. In fact, as I said, Putin doesn't want to antagonize Trump,
Yes.
especially at a time when Trump is at least willing to countenance, to consider some of the Russian demands, especially relating to land. But I don't see
Yes.
a meeting ground between Russia and Ukraine as of now. If for 30 days both the parties defer the issue of land,
Yes.
then perhaps a limited ceasefire can be worked out, but only if both the parties agree that the issue of land,
Yes.
especially the land that Russia is controlling, Ukrainian land, that will be negotiated only during this time and maybe after the expiry of these 30 days. Only then, perhaps, a
Yes.
ceasefire can be worked out. Otherwise, I don't think the possibilities are very bright.
Meanwhile, Ambassador Sajjanhar, Russia's tone is rather bullish. They are calling out NATO and the European Union. They're saying that Moscow has been underestimated. It doesn't quite sound like a country that's preparing to make concessions in any kind of ceasefire or a peace deal, does it?
Yeah, Vikram, I think Russia has sensed that there is animosity between the United States, between Mr. Trump and the European nations. So it is trying to take the maximum advantage of that and trying to ensure that the Europeans are kept out of any discussions or negotiations. You would have seen that, there has been talk between Trump and between the US and Ukraine. He has been able to push Ukraine and Russia, their officials also to get together and have a tete-a-tete in Riyadh. And in fact, he suggested that this whole issue of, exchange of power plants and land, etc., that has been discussed and decided upon by Ukraine and Russia, although there have been no details that have been made available.
Yes.
But at the same time, the Europeans want to stay relevant. So you would see that on 28 February, when this fracas took place in Oval Office in White House, you had on the 2 days after that, on Sunday, on the 2nd of March, you had this summit by Keir Starmer. And then on next Thursday, there was another virtual meeting. And this week again, on Thursday, I think there's going to be another meeting. So the Europeans want to keep themselves relevant because they know that the security of Ukraine is very intimately tied with the security of Europe.
Exactly.
And so they want then, there is a ceasefire, they want to send their own peacekeepers there. So, we'll really have to wait and see how that works out.
So exactly, they want skin in the game and they have to be seen being able to support Ukraine. But Zelensky is already saying that Putin is setting so many conditions that nothing will work out at all. That's what he said. So is this going to be an opening negotiation tactic, or is Zelensky and Europe right that Moscow generally doesn't want to drag this out and not really get into a ceasefire at the moment? All of this is in play, but minus the US right now, Ambassador. Where are Ukraine's Western allies at this point? Though France and Canada, they are demanding clear commitments from Russia. Do these Western allies of Ukraine have enough leverage over Putin, or is this just more diplomatic posturing right now?
At the moment, they don't have much leverage over Putin, and Putin is trying to make sure that they, don't enter the equation. That is why you have, statements coming from Macron that, Ukraine is a sovereign country and Russia is not going to dictate as to what, whether there should be outside forces in Ukraine or not. It will depend upon the Ukrainian people because what Putin has been saying is that there should be total demilitarization of Ukraine. I think Putin, in my view, Vikram, has put his maximalist position in front, and he would like that, whatever he can gain on this, get that all the territories are going to be with Russia or non-NATO membership of Ukraine. Whatever he can get, that will be good, and the rest could be negotiated subsequently. While what Ukraine wants is no conditions and, let us say, the possession of the 20%, the 4 provinces on the east of Ukraine, stay with Russia for the time being, and the whole issue be decided through negotiations, which will follow the ceasefire. So we'll really have to wait and see how it all pans out.
So as we try and speculate what could happen by way of a ceasefire deal, Ambassador is suggesting that perhaps maybe they will have a ceasefire and then the negotiations around this entire splitting or the slicing of occupied, at least what Russia has been able to occupy on the eastern front of Ukraine, that remains to be seen and how much of negotiation happens. But going into these talks, Professor, who do you think has the upper hand, Trump or Putin? Professor, you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, definitely Putin has the upper hand in the sense that he's speaking from a position of strength. He is already in possession of 20% of Ukraine's territory. He is about to evict Ukrainian forces from the small territory that the Ukrainians occupied 6 months back. And so he's taking a maximalist position, as Ambassador Sajjanhar very rightly said. And the ground situation favors Russia. And Trump's desperation to arrive at a peace deal
Yes.
is something which only benefits Russia. So as of now, it is advantage Russia, but we have to wait and see.
So, Professor, will a ceasefire deal, do you think they can agree upon one within the next 30 days?
Even if the deal is agreed upon, I don't think the land question can be negotiated now. It will only be after such an agreement comes into force in the next 30 days, maybe. And after that, if no agreement is arrived at, I'm afraid the hostilities will resume. So anything is possible. A limited ceasefire, 30-day ceasefire, without really settling the land question is possible, but may be very difficult to arrive at.
Difficult to arrive at. You agree with that, Ambassador?
Well, I am slightly more optimistic because, there is, to that, extent, I agree with Professor Sanjay Pandey that, Trump is desperate. So, if he has to sign off anything, as far as Ukraine is concerned, he will be quite prepared to do that.
Right.
And he has already said that Russia holds all the cards. Ukraine does not hold any cards. So, he is a businessman. He is a deal maker. And he's looking at it, what is in it for him. And for him, it is that he can sort of, go in front of the world and thump his chest and say that, whatever has been going on for the last 3 years, I've been able to get a peace deal.
Right.
Now, whether the peace deal is just, it is fair, it is durable, it is stable, that is, I think, something that we will have to wait and see. Like even in the case of Gaza,
Right.
he was able to get something on the 19th of January.
Yes.
But you look at how it is sort of, fraying,
Yes.
how it is coming apart. So I think it is possible this 30 days.
Yes.
But then after that, we really have to work and try to get something more substantive out of it.
Substantive and longer lasting than just 30 days. We will have to keep tracking that. But this entire Trump-Putin call is shaping up to be a geopolitical thriller. Will it really bring peace or just set the stage for more tension? The world, of course, is watching closely. The two leaders are going to decide Ukraine's fate. And all of this while Kyiv and Brussels and the world really brace for what's going to happen next. Optically, diplomacy is back in the spotlight. But whether it's going to lead to a real breakthrough or just another round of political chess, now that's something that we are tracking. Professor Pandey, Ambassador Sajjanhar, always a pleasure having you on our show. Thank you so much for your insights tonight as well.
Thank you. Thank you.